Thank you, Martha. Hi, really wonderful to be back in Southern California. I actually went to grad school here 15 years ago. It's where I met my wife, who's now watching from Berlin, Germany via live stream, together with our daughter, who is turning 9 today. So happy birthday, Hopper. It's a promise I had to keep. So last year we moved from the Bay Area back to my home country of Germany. And to say that the culture shock was profound is an understatement. So suddenly we were surrounded by street signs that look like this. And I'm still trying to figure out what it could possibly mean. Whatever the activity is that's being described here, it certainly is verboten. And I'm also confronted again with this tension that seems to be inherent to the German psyche, which is one between efficiency on the one hand and then a striving for beauty on the other. It's a tension between pragmatism on the one hand and on the other hand, romanticism. And I believe that's actually a very universal struggle. And it has taken me 40 years or so to figure it out, but I've now come to realize, although my wife still doesn't fully buy into it, but I've come to realize that I am a romantic. I'm a business person, I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also an unabashed romantic. And I believe the world would be a better place if we had more romance in our lives. And I'm convinced we must find it and create it in and through business. Now, how about you? If you are a romantic, and you lead your life in a romantic way, you look at the world in a romantic way, please raise your hand. Don't be shy. I know it's hard in front of peers and colleagues. Okay. I think I would estimate that's about 33.5% of the audience. And how many of you are romantic when it comes to business? How many of you have a romantic relationship to work? Raise your hand if that's the case. Okay. All right. Well, it's not quite 33%, maybe 21.7. And that's very common because business and romance really seem to be at odds. Business is about making rational decisions. It's about managing what you can measure. It's about being in control. Romance, however, is about experiences of awe and beauty. It's about experiences that make our hearts beat faster, that make our adrenaline rush. It's experiences that make us lose control and fall in love with a project, an idea, a brand, an organization, the whole world around us. And by the way, the romantic is also different from the idealist and the optimist. For the optimist, the glass is always half full. The idealist insists the glass always be utterly full. And the romantic looks at the glass and says, "Isn't it beautiful?" But it's hard. It's hard to find that beauty at the workplace. Only 30% of employees worldwide, according to Gallup, are fully engaged at work. And there's a recent poll that even found there's only one activity that's considered less desirable than work, and that is being sick in bed. It's not surprising because many of us were, or still are, I hope not, stuck in corporate structures that look like this. Stifling joy and expression. Now, what is actually digital technology's role in all of this? Of course, on the one hand, digital technology has helped us connect. It has helped increase transparency, which is great. But on the other hand, it has really done one thing really well, and that is scaling efficiency, and along with it, also increasing efficiency pressures. And it is to be expected that those efficiencies and efficiency pressures are only going to increase with the fourth industrial revolution, with the rise of so-called exponential technologies, such as artificial intelligence and robotics. 50% of the human workforce, according to one study, is expected to be replaced by AI and robots over the next 20 years. My friend and colleague Gerrit Leonhard puts it this way. He says, if you can describe your job in one sentence, then chances are you're not going to have one much longer. Which is to say that if your job is monotonous, repetitive, process-driven, linear, then probably very soon a machine will do it more efficiently than you. But there are also more moderated views. that actually say, no, it's not that all professions are suddenly going to disappear. Andrew McAfee from the MIT is one of them, and he says, AI is not going to replace humans. It's not going to be that black and white. But humans who can work with AI are going to replace humans who can't. And in any case, this development, automation, is going to raise two important questions. One, what will it mean to be human in an age of machines? And then second, will exponential technology actually make us more or less human? And like with any technology, of course, we can use exponential technology to humanize or to dehumanize. We can use, for example, sensor technology to enhance human creativity and expression. And we can use that very same technology, as some retailers have begun to do, and implant it as microchips into the bodies of their workers to track every single one of their moves. We can use so-called artificial emotional intelligence to allow autistic children to recognize their emotions and to relate to people in their environment. We can also use that very same technology, artificial emotional intelligence, to track our emotions, analyze them, optimize them, and ultimately manipulate them. And that emotional engineering is already happening at the workplace as part of the quantified self, quantified workplace movement. And it's possible that we might be in a workplace soon where there are apps like this one, Don't Worry, Be Happy, it's called. And it tracks your facial expressions while you're performing a task in front of a computer. And if you stop smiling, if you stop being happy, then it deletes all the progress that you've made over the past hour. A not so subtle way of fostering employee engagement. And this obsession with the quantification, the datafication, the optimization of ourselves has infiltrated the most private, the most intimate parts of our life. Case in point is an app called Spreadsheets that promises users to enhance their sexual performance based on a rigorous analysis of data from past performances. And if that's not your cup of tea or it doesn't work for you, then you can use this service, Breakup Text. That lets you send automated breakup text messages. Might be worth trying out. And soon we might indeed be falling in love with a machine, with a chatbot, with an AI, as was so beautifully portrayed in the movie Her by Spike Jonze, about which the New York Times wrote, "The great question is not whether machines will be able to think. The much bigger question is, will we humans still be able to feel? Is there a danger that we become smart machines ourselves? Because when everything is automated, measurable, made predictable, then where do we find these profound experiences that punctuate our routines? Where are the strangers? Where is the strangeness? Where is the magic? Are we at risk of engineering the romance out of our lives systematically?" Now, we've been at a point of similar disenchantment before, and that was about 200 years ago when the original Romantic movement, the British, German, French poets and philosophers, revolted against the Enlightenment, the regime of practical reason and scientific rationality. They thought it was too narrow of a concept to grasp the expensive, rich human soul. So they espoused virtues and qualities such as suffering, inconsistency, mystery, ambiguity, unpredictability in response to that. And I believe we're now at a similar moment in time. We need a new romantic revolution. This time coming from the heart of business in response to the datafication, the automation, the optimization of everything, including ourselves. For romance is what makes us human. And romance is also the ultimate differentiator when everybody else is just maximizing and optimizing. He knows this. Jack Ma, the co-founder and until recently chairman of internet giant Alibaba, he had a remarkable appearance at Davos at the World Economic Forum earlier this year, where he said, yeah, let's invest in STEM and coding, that's all good, but let's not forget to teach our children about matters of the heart. Let's give them a sentimental education, because to thrive in a machine age, we need to feel more. Because as machines take our jobs, and do them more efficiently, soon the most important work, if not the only remaining work for us humans, is the kind of work that must be done beautifully rather than efficiently, with empathy, imagination, and love. But how? How do you do that? So I'd like to propose 3 principles. I call them the rules of enchantment, and that might help you lead more beautifully in business. First, do the unnecessary. I once worked at a company that was the result of a merger. We were merging a mid-sized IT outsourcing firm and a small design boutique firm. We were bringing together 9,000 software developers, predominantly from India, with 1,000 creative types designers from the West Coast. And to unify these 2 vastly different cultures, we were going to launch a third new brand and a new brand identity. And the new brand color was going to be orange. Now, as we were going through the launch plan, the management team, we decided, last minute, to cut the purchase of 10,000 orange balloons, which we had meant to distribute to staff worldwide. They just seemed cute, unnecessary, or as the CFO put it, not mission critical. So we cut them. And we didn't know back then that our decision to cut the purchase of these 10,000 orange balloons marked the beginning of the end. That these 2 organizations would never become one, and sure enough, the merger eventually failed. Now, did it fail because there weren't any orange balloons? No, not entirely. But it was that mindset behind that decision, the kill the orange balloons mentality that permeated everything else. It was toxic. You might not always realize it, but when you cut the unnecessary, you cut everything. To lead with beauty means to rise above what is merely necessary. So whatever you do, do not kill your orange balloons. He knew about the power of the invisible, the power of the unnecessary, Steve Jobs. He famously insisted on designing the interior of computers, the motherboards, with the same love and the same rigor as the exterior. And he said customers don't see it, but they can feel it. That's the power of the unnecessary. Now, what is the most radically unnecessary thing that a company, that a brand can possibly do? Well, it's to actively advise its customers not to buy its product. And that's exactly what Patagonia did, the outdoor clothing company. It placed ads in leading US newspapers at the height of shopping season saying, don't buy this jacket, don't buy our product. And they didn't really advertise the product, they advertised their values, because the purpose of Patagonia is to fight climate change with all commercial means possible. So it was a stance against radical consumerism. Sales actually went up, and it got them lasting, values-aligned brand attachment. It's really true what this German entrepreneur said once. Customers and employees are not staying with us because of what we do, but because of who we are. And especially in times of moral confusion, fake news, and exponential change, companies that stick to their values, their principles, that speak their truth, will have a sustainable competitive advantage. More than ever before, I believe, companies can be the meaning makers of our time. And not just that, they're also the great socializers. Which brings us to rule number 2, create intimacy. So I came across a study, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, that stated that the average American has only one confidant, one close friend. And that numbers have declined over the past few years, so much so that experts speak of an age of social isolation, an age of loneliness, a loneliness epidemic, which is really strange given the fact that we've never been more connected, never been more communicative than in this point in history. We check our smartphones on average 80 times per day. Some of us go to the restroom just to check their emails. And yet, we are lonelier than before. Why? The writer Richard Bach has an explanation. He says the opposite of loneliness is not togetherness. It's not connectivity. It's intimacy. And we are in dire need for more intimacy in these digital times. So much so that there are already some business models, very obscure business models, popping up addressing that. So in the Hollywood Hills in LA, there's a man, Chuck McCarthy. He's the people walker. So he offers a service for a few bucks. He walks with strangers for a few miles for a few minutes of their life and just listens. So that really underscores this desire for intimacy. But the question is, how do we design for it in our organizations? And whom can we learn from? Artists. Artists are very, very good at crafting intimacy. Take performance artist Marina Abramovic, who once held a show in New York City called The Artist is Present. And that's exactly what she was. She was present. For 718 hours, she just sat there, 5 minutes, a visitor at a time, silently looking into each other's eyes, enduring their mutual gaze, celebrating the kind of time that is thick rather than lean and efficient. And it's this notion of thick time, thick presence, that is now also entering boardrooms and offices. For one, in the form of mindfulness initiatives. Aetna, the insurance company, has a mindfulness program that's very popular. SAP, the software company, has a head of mindfulness. Daimler, the car maker, has started to begin meetings with a silent minute. And there are even more radical formats, such as silent dinners, that some companies have begun to implement. I took part in one, and let me tell you, I've seen many strange things in my career, but spending 90 minutes with 30 German business executives silently over dinner was incredibly awkward. But it was also beautiful, because what happened after a while was that people dropped masks, they let down their guard, and in silence, we actually began to communicate more than we would have in the transactional networking, small talk setting of a traditional business event. So this is how you create intimacy. No masks, or lots of masks. This is what Danone did, the food company. It gathered its 200 leaders for a strategy retreat, and then it asked them to wear silly costumes, feather boas, wigs, hats, crazy hats, for the entire 3-day meeting. And this is actually, I think, the CEO, Emmanuel Faber, here on the left. They left with concrete decisions and a lot of enthusiasm. So the meeting was really a success. And when I asked the woman who had designed it, she simply says, Tim, it's very simple. The meeting was successful because never underestimate the power of a ridiculous wig. Wigs erase hierarchy, and hierarchy kills intimacy for the CEO and the intern alike. If you want intimacy, you have to remove hierarchy. And that's what this organization did. Buurtzorg. It's a Dutch caregiving organization that did something really remarkable a few years ago. It removed all job titles, all manager roles, and instead formed small teams of nurses and empowered them to do whatever they thought was in the best interest of the customer, of the patient. 2 things happened. One, they've grown tremendously. They're very successful. Secondly, the cost per customer, the cost per patient actually went down. So they've become a more effective organization. They made better decisions. Why? Because they no longer only relied on abstract segments of data. They made decisions based on intuitive, intimate, personal relationships with the customers. Now the question is it possible to do both, to be smart and data-driven and yet also craft intimacy? And I think Airbnb is a good example for that. Of course, having this super smart, data-driven matchmaking engine is a big part of their success. But at the heart of their brand promise lies a romantic premise, which is to step into the life of a stranger, to not know exactly what's going to happen behind that door. There's an element of mystique. And it's exactly that combination of being smart, data-driven, and romantic that makes Airbnb so successful, and I believe is a blueprint for any organization in the future. Intimacy, of course, is what we really want. We appreciate connectivity, but we are longing for intimacy. We want to be recognized as unique, individual, subjective human beings, not the targets of algorithmic recommendation engines. We don't want personalized experiences. We want personal experiences. But intimacy requires one quality, and that is vulnerability. And vulnerability requires one key human quality that machines cannot emulate, and that is inherently romantic. and it's the ability to suffer. But no worries, only a little. But that is really counter to the way we design most of our workplace and customer experiences, isn't it? Because mostly they're designed for instant gratification, maximum comfort, ease of use, efficiency. Amazon being the poster boy, it will soon deliver everything our heart can possibly desire to our doorstep via drone. In Japan, you can order already a priest via Amazon. And then, of course, there's Amazon Go, the fully automated supermarket that Amazon launched in Seattle and I believe elsewhere. The promise was no nasty lines, check in, check out, no humans, super efficiency. Here's what happened. Humans began to line up in front of the store. Why? Because there's only one thing that humans appreciate more than convenience, and that is experience, shared experience, especially if it involves just a tiny little bit of suffering. Because it is true what Lila Davachi says. We say we want more time, but what we really want is more memories. And this is why people climb up for days and days and days on the mountaintops of the Alps to see the leading bikers of the Tour de France fly by in 10, 15 seconds. This is why thousands of people participate in this strange phenomenon called ice swimming, where they jump into ice-cold water at the same time in cities worldwide. Not very convenient. And this is why 80,000 people embark on this annual pilgrimage to the Black Rock Desert in Nevada to celebrate Burning Man. It's a week-long festival of gift economy, of essentially testing the boundaries of your identity, of losing control to some degree. So when you talk to evolutionary psychologists, they will tell you that our brains are still wired for the Stone Age. That we're still looking for these life-threatening, precarious, existential threat that gives us a sense of fitness, of meaning, of being alive in the face of danger. However, we have all but banned those critical experiences from our modern Western societies. Thank God, they're not as dangerous anymore. But we need these experiences to, feel alive. So what do? We create surrogate experiences. We go bungee jumping, skydiving, we run ultra marathons, or we go to IKEA. IKEA has perfected the art of making its customers suffer. And I mean this with the greatest respect. It's a labor of love. If you are in an IKEA parkour, it's like the seventh circle of hell. And if you try to self-assemble a Billy Oslo clip-on Boris piece of furniture, it's a reminder of your own existential incompetence. And the same principle of frustration, by the way, is also typical for any customer loyalty program. Take frequent flyer miles. Do you ever cash them in fully? No, they're all about delayed gratification, permanent unfulfillment, a very romantic principle indeed. And in recruiting too, by the way, there are practices that deliberately lose a little bit of suffering. So Zappos, the online retailer, for example, required applicants first to join a social network, an inside social network, build some social currency before they were able to apply. So they actually made it harder for them in some way to apply than easier. But if we talk about suffering, and suffering is really the source of passion, literally, then we have to talk about one group of people who are very, very adapted. And that is the sports fan, the soccer fan.
With voices and high expectations, they cover Trafalgar Square, draping the Lions to roar England to victory. Owen's goal turned the chanting into euphoria. At Heathrow Airport, tension of passengers waiting to board flights erupted into cheers. In the north at Gateshead Fire Station, an identical burst of celebration and optimism. The children of Rector Drew School in North Wales were cheering a homegrown hero. This is where Michael
I think as long as we're able to experience that amount of passion and joy, we don't have to be worried about AI and robots. But there's something else that's interesting about the sports fan. The true fan, of course, wants their team to win. But what is even more important is how the team wins. And by the way, also how the team loses. Right? The most painful defeats are actually much more a part of brand folklore and build a relationship to a club than the most legendary victories. But not so in business. Right? In business, we are actually taught to grow up to play to win. I would argue, though, that in the future, we're all going to be losing a little bit. We will be losing control to some degree over our brands. We will be losing authority. We will lose the continuity of traditional employment. We will enter and exit relationships, organizations much more often. We will have to reinvent ourselves much more often. And we need rituals and practices to help us with these transitions. And here too, soccer can actually teach us a lesson. This is the story of Andres Iniesta, is the legendary midfielder of the soccer club FC Barcelona. He recently played his last game for the club after 22 years in Barcelona. And he played his farewell game. And after the game was over, he walked back into the stadium and he sat down in the center circle of the pitch. And he just sat there barefoot for an hour or so and was soaking in all the memories that the stadium held for him. It was literally between his old life and his new life. It was a ritual, symbolic act. And it's exactly that kind of space and kind of ritual that we need in business too. We don't need only positive emotions, happiness and joy. A truly human workplace also appreciates and enables negative emotions, sadness, mourning, and grief. We need to become not only good at starting things, but also at ending them. So this is the cue for me in wrapping up. These are the 3 rules of enchantment, the 3 principles that I wanted to share with you. Do the unnecessary, create intimacy, and suffer a little. And I do believe that they indicate a broader cultural shift away from the smart, connected age, the dominant paradigm of our past decade or so, data-driven, to a new era, a romantic era, where a different set of virtues and qualities are becoming important. Wondering instead of reacting in real time. Deep connection, not just connectivity. Presence instead of plan. Letting go instead of control. Big intuition, not just big data. Vulnerability instead of calculated risk. Passion over liking. And frustration, suffering a little bit instead of user-friendliness. Significance and meaning instead of excellence and efficiency. And yes, in case you wondered, romance comes with an ROI. First, innovation. If you don't have romantics in your organization, fools who see the world as it is not, but could be, then you're not going to be truly disruptive and innovative. Second, customer loyalty. If you want your customers and your employees to fall in love with you again and again and again, you have to give them more than just solutions to problems. And then thirdly, I believe it's exactly those romantic traits that are inherently human that will actually make the fabric for jobs and skills that are going to be appreciated in the future in a machine age. It's empathy, intuition, imagination, and emotional agility. But if you ask me as a romantic, frankly, what is the ultimate ROI of romance? It's not even financial for me. It's very simple. The ultimate ROI of romance for me is more romance. And that is important. Because we live in this strange age of dissonance. We're more connected than ever, but we're also lonelier than before. We are drowning in an abundance of data and information, but the prevailing sentiment of our time appears to be one of loss. Losing stability, certainty, maybe identity, even our human agency in light of AI and automation. And this is why it's so important that we build and nurture workplaces, brands, and organizations that are like gardens and not machines, that value, again, what we cannot measure, that create products, services, and business models and experiences that are not only more useful, but also more beautiful. And I'm not only a romantic, I'm also an optimist. I believe if we combine the power and the magic of exponential technology with those inherently human qualities that I described, which for me are essential romantic traits, then perhaps we can not only be exponentially more efficient or exponentially more productive, but just a tiny little bit more human. And that, I hope, is a vision for the future of work and our societies that not only a romantic like me can subscribe to. Thank you very much. Thank you.